Move over the bronzed Aussie. You are no longer the typical Australian. Instead, meet Heidi Murphy, broadcaster and radio producer. She's 38 years old with 2 kids, 2 cars, and lives in a major capital city in a house with a mortgage.
It feels a little strange. I don't think it's a bad thing, but it's not quite what I was expecting.
According to the first glimpse of our national census, Heidi and 38-year-old women like her are now the typical Aussies. She was born here, so were her parents. She has British ancestry. A decade ago, the typical Australian home was owned outright, but today the typical homeowner now has a mortgage. It infers that families now have more costs, more financial stress than a decade ago.
They might have the majority of their wealth, over $400,000 in equity in that home. And so certainly the challenge of affordability is seen through this data.
Your own perception of who is the typical Australian might also be changing, but that perception might well depend on where you live. In Queensland, the typical migrant comes from New Zealand. In Sydney, they're from China, and in Victoria, from India. But overall, across Australia, the typical migrant is a 44-year-old Englishwoman.
The typical Aussie actually does have one parent born overseas.
In the main, we are far more diverse than we've ever been, and that will continue to happen.
But with all the controversy over the breakdown of the census website in August last year, and more than $30 million compensation paid out by computer giant IBM to the government, can the information be trusted?
The data is far more reliable than some people would have you believe.
The full version of the census will be released in late June. Ross Greenwood, 9 News.